you.
So what we're going to do is we're going to turn down the audio so people can still have candid conversations before it starts. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Jerry Garcia.
No commentary.
Love Jerry Garcia.
Oh, you're that fan, huh?
But, well, no, I wasn't that big of a Grateful Dead fan, but I just love the ties.
Yeah,
I always buy them cold when they go on sale, and when I have a coupon. I mean, so I don't love them so much that I'm going to pay full price.
Hi, Bill. Not Megan. Michaela. I got that. See, I got that.
This is how she reminded me, right?
Every trick.
It's all wadded up to the bottom of a box and shake it around. Well, that's pretty obvious. All right.
yeah.
And if the bad guy is going to die,
That was the old It's very strange. I thought the same thing. When I got
it's not about 60,000 installation.
Hi. Oh, everyone's playing for the grab another row. Let's grab some chairs.
It's spread out on the side. Sometimes I just even know when I'm actually say it. My monitor. Last year.
That's how I like music. I want to. It's standing room only, then your legs will go nuts about 5. Oh, yeah, right.
Teacher. Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did that work? So now I'm going to have to use it. Good. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome for being here. I guess we learned that maybe we may need to move to a bigger venue next time. We'll take a look at it. But we didn't expect this many people. We thought this would be great. But anyway, welcome. Glad to have you here. This is a town hall. It's a free-for-all. Like I said, bring the kids and sing. But before we get started, I'd just like to do one little thing. I'd like to introduce our new cabinet members and have them get up and take a minute or so to introduce themselves to you if you did not meet them previously, and then we get started on the town hall. So we'll go my left to your right. So your right. Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Louis Nossi. I'm the new Chief Advancement Officer at the college. I started on July 16th. And so that day when I started, something changed. And I want you all to listen very carefully to what changed. As of July 16th, advancement at this college is under new management. So what does that mean? That means this division will collaborate with all parts of this college in a way that you've never seen before. That also means we will be transparent about what we do, when we do it, why we're doing it, and the intellectual thought behind it. In the coming weeks, I'm going to meet with every single academic department on this campus. And during those meetings, if you have dreams that you've dreamt about and have never been met with discussion, I'm there to listen. If you have crazy ideas that you've been afraid to ask, that's your moment to ask. No one loves crazy ideas more than I do. So I look forward to meeting you all and working with you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Kaiser. I'm the new provost and vice president of academic and student affairs. I think my first day was July 30th, and I think I've hit the ground running. President and I gave me a great assignment to help learn the culture of FLCC. He asked me to interview at least 25 people with a common set of questions. I'll be talking more about that in the next few weeks. But if I've interviewed you so far, raise your hand. I've interviewed over 25 people, so I'm hopefully finding some themes. Previous to this, I was at City Colleges of Chicago. I was deputy provost there, and I have about 15 to 18 years of teaching and administrative experiences in higher education, and I'm really enjoying my time here. I'm learning a lot. The interviews are great. My office hours, I'm holding some administrative office hours. They're Monday and Wednesdays, 11 to 12. I highly encourage you to come by and see me. If I haven't interviewed you so far to learn about the culture of FLCC, please stop by, set up an appointment with Elizabeth. And I'm looking forward to serving you and our students. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm J.R. Dempsey. I'm the new Vice President of Administration and Finance. I also came from City Colleges of Chicago, but not to worry, Jonathan and I are not Chicago boys. We didn't come here to try to make a statement about being here. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that I'm really happy to be here in Canandaigua and in this part of New York is I grew up in a very similar situation in a rural area in Mississippi and Arkansas. Even though I spent 40 years living in the Chicago area, I'm still just a country boy at heart. So no worries there. One of the things that I'm really delving into right now is trying to figure out Sunni. Right? And
Ontario County, and how all the dollars flow. So it's really been, I started on July 30th as well. So it's really, I'm really happy to be here and look forward to working with you all as we figure this out together. Thanks.
Okay, fire away.
The skunk smell? Are we doing anything about the skunks?
Kathy, just before we sat down, said, "Here's one that you're likely to get." So it turns out that it looks like there's a family of skunks that is nested somewhere near the air handler. There is a pest control person here today who is setting traps, and we are addressing that. I asked her if she could take care of the ones out by my apartment, but I guess that's a little bit too far afield from there. Yes, that's definitely being addressed.
Who's next? That was too easy. A harder one.
I think there are 4 questions that we have to address, and they are the complaints of students. One complaint I've heard through the years is how we schedule. Students complain that they have too much time between classes just waiting. The second problem is they don't want to come 5 days, and the question is, why do we make them come 5 days? The third question is some students, 50% of their classes are taken with adjuncts. That's a complaint. And the final one I have is, why is it if you're in developmental studies and you're taking 3 classes and you're learning a little more about ways to increase comprehension of reading, do you then put those students in regular classes?
Hey, good morning. Can I get your name as well?
Yeah, Edward Kennedy.
What is it?
Edward Kennedy.
Good morning, Edward. Class scheduling is definitely on my list of things to review. I've been working closely with Cassie Kent, as most faculty and department chairs know. We've spent the last 2 to 3 weeks canceling hundreds of courses, literally hundreds of courses that are low enrolled. Today at 3 o'clock, if a course does not have at least 8 students in, we're reviewing it and canceling. It's the last round of cancellations. This is definitely a high priority issue on my radar screen. I think some work needs to be done both on the front end and the back end, and I think you alluded to it, Dr. Kennedy, when you said that we need to be thinking about when courses are offered. I'd really like to start working with our faculty and our department chairs on maybe more of a student-centered, demand-driven schedule. So we are looking at when students need and are interested in taking classes. Do we offer the right classes at the right times, both at the main campus and at our campus centers? Now, I think a lot of, it's easy to pick a number and say, okay, courses under this should not run. And we could figure out those numbers financially. But I don't think that's the right situation either. We have to consider many things. Dr. and I have similar views on this, where you have to consider the academic considerations, the financial considerations, and then just some common sense about it. So if it's a sequence course and there's a cohort of students that need it to graduate or to move on, we need to offer that, because that's the right thing to do for those students. But a lot of the cancellations I'm seeing are 100 level classes, introductory classes, survey classes that happen towards, that fulfill general electives, And we might be able to take a second look there to see if we're offering the right courses at the right time. So one of the things that Cassie sent out just yesterday to all department chairs is that we'll be meeting in the next 3 weeks with every department to review the courses that are built already, the schedule is set for spring 19, and review that and bump that up against the courses that are being offered at least 75% enrolled. And we're hoping that if we spend a little bit more time on the front end of it, we do less cancellations. Now, cancellations have a lot of cascading effects because when we cancel a course, the 4 or 5 students in that now have to pick another course. A lot of time goes into contacting those students, alerting them of this cancellation. It also bumps full-time and part-time faculty schedules around because as a full-time faculty's course gets canceled, they bump a part-time faculty. So there's a lot of disruption in course scheduling, and just from these talking with faculty and staff, especially faculty and staff who have students here, guess what they're saying? Well, my child who goes to FLCCC, they know that they shouldn't register for a class until the very last moment because of the chaos in the scheduling. So that's the message that our students already know. So we have to do 2 things. We have to do a better job of developing the right schedule, and then there's a whole campaign around messaging to students to register early for the classes. But they're not going to do that if we continue to cancel classes at the rate we do. So we have to do both. So look forward. I appreciate the question. It's not an easy response. I've been here 3.5 weeks. It's definitely on my high priority list. But I think working together, the provost's office, working with each department chair, offering the right classes, will make a smoother system so that we have less hiccups, both in the canceling and in offering the right courses at the right time. Next question? Or comments about that? Suggestions?
I just want to comment one more thing on, Ed mentioned the 5-day-a-week thing, and I know about, 5 or 6 years ago we had a scheduling committee look at some options, and I know we did look at a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday option, and then a Friday, opportunities for all sorts of other co-curricular things, and that sort of died somewhere in the process, and I'm just wondering if there's any heart to look at rethinking our campus's schedule again.
Was there like a white paper done, any survey? Because if anybody has that information, I'd be happy to look at it and let that start to inform our decision making as we start to build schedules for fall 19, which sounds so far away, but it will be here quick. The other thing that I want to mention is that as we build schedules, we could build schedules but not necessarily make the classes active, so they could be pending, and as classes fill up, then we open up more sections. And that might be one way to help minimize the disruption in course schedules. But I'm definitely open to the cadence of courses, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with Fridays off. But it really needs to depend on what student interests and needs are. Other questions?
So it's more of a suggestion rather than a question. Yesterday afternoon, we had a session on how to address needs of working students, adult learners, and one of the suggestions, this was implemented probably in Miami-Dade College, where students had classes on Friday evening, and then 1 class on Friday evening, and 3 classes on Saturday. So that is something we ought to look at. And for the other days, Monday through Friday, perhaps we can look at sort of 2 shifts. So you have a morning shift with classes mostly in morning. So if you're majoring in certain discipline, you can take classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, and then afternoon or late evening shifts, so that people who have jobs can also get the courses they need to complete a program by just taking evening courses. And perhaps something like that can be done on Tuesday, Thursdays as well. But those will be long Tuesday, Thursdays.
Silence isn't golden.
We do have a couple of microphones that Christy and I are running so that you guys don't have to.
Hi. So I'm curious to know from any or all of you, what were some takeaways that you had from the keynote speaker yesterday?
I'll start, since you all were silent. So. I learned more about things going on, not from the speaker, but when sitting in the presentation after the speaker, which helped to drive very detailed questions from the faculty that were driven by the initial introduction. And what I got out of that was the challenges you have in making judgmental decisions on doing what is right based on having a basic and fundamental knowledge of what the requirements are for disabilities and students with disabilities in the classroom. I was also thankful from the presenter to learn that there's only 2 types of animals that are allowed in the classroom, because we had some discussions about that this past year, and so that was great to find that out. Those are the 2 things I got. Anybody else?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is the distinction between what's legally required and what should be done, and to be cognizant all the time that we don't want to just necessarily do the minimum legally required, because the whole point of raising awareness about disabilities and students is that if we're really focused on student success, we're always going to be thinking about how do we help this student overcome or manage their educational attainment with whatever disability they may have. Whether or not it's a legally defined disability or whether it's just some other sort of thing. And that, I think, was kind of an underlying theme that she was saying, and she sort of referred to periodically, is that this is the minimum legal requirement, but you maybe want to go a little bit further than that if you're really interested in having this particular student, succeed.
To piggyback on what Jairus said, I was familiar with a lot of the details, a lot of what's legal, what's not, what accounts for accommodation, what doesn't. But what I really liked was her framework. What accommodation would you make for your favorite student? What accommodation would you make for the most annoying student? Because unfortunately, sometimes it's not our favorite students who need those accommodations. And I never had a good framework to talk about that. But that is such a good framework to talk about and think about as we work through the logistics of making accommodations for our students. So I really appreciated that framework.
Susan McCarthy, for those who don't know me. So to follow up on what I was saying about ESL students, because our initiative is to have more diversity here on campus, we do not have the support, and Colleen's office is overrun with a lot of disability issues, but we have students who need things because they just come from different countries and need more time with the English language, that we cannot afford them. And we are held to our accreditation standard of being fair to every single student. So that is our standard, our favorite student, our not favorite student. We are judged on that when we come for accreditation. So we want every student to be successful, and we do everything we can, but we don't have the resources to do that. So my question is, what support or scaffolding are you going to be able to provide with the new initiative that you're looking to do?
I'm not going to pretend like I have the silver bullet or the answer for that, because I don't think there is one, and I'm certainly too new to understand what's working and not working already in place. My mission to interview and talk with many, many people is to understand the current policy, procedures, people, politics, all of that. So I don't have a clear answer for you. But coming from an institution where ESL was a major component of our course offerings. So for instance, we had credit ESL program course offerings and non-credit. We had some of the most we had the most diverse community college campus in the state of Illinois, where more languages were spoken there than anywhere else. So ESL was a very, very big deal at city colleges, and I'm very familiar with trying to develop ESL programs. I'm not sure what the right fit is here, and that will take some time for me to learn, but I'm certainly happy to work with you and Colleen and other faculty, and if we want to, and support services, and if we want to create a small task force that looks at that, not a committee that lasts forever and ever, but just a small working group for a limited time to figure out what's the current state and what could we shift towards. That would be helpful for me.
Kind of along those same lines. My name is Warren White. I teach in communications. One of the things that came up yesterday, and we deal with often, are students who are in crises, or it may not be as strong as the word crises, but to them it is. For example, last semester in a public speaking course, I had a woman who wasn't in class, and then she would be in class. Basically, I found out that she was a single mom, victim of domestic violence, and was living out of her car. And then I had another difficult student, or a student who was facing difficulties in the class. My issue, and it could be my total ignorance of the system, is that when I'm in class, and you have 20 some other students in class, and you're trying to deal with this, and you're trying to figure out how can I refer them. I'm not sure what kind of system we have set up here at the college anymore, because the office that has handled these, it was pretty easy 18 years ago when I started, and I could go down and say, hey, Barb Schreiber, or hey, Teresa Daddis, and they were there and would respond quickly. I'm not quite sure as to what process I need to follow in an emergency anymore, or if there's like a counselor who's on call each day, who, those of you who may have crisis in the classroom, this is your go-to person today. Just a comment.
Do you use the Starfish alert system?
I do, but if I'm in class and conducting class and a student, I don't have time to, let me find Starfish and share something and see if someone responds in 24 hours.
Does anyone from the academic and student affairs staff have a suggestion for Professor Warren?
Well, I'm not from student affairs, but Warren, you still walk them down to Teresa.
Yeah, I do. I pause class and I say, excuse me, and thank goodness for Teresa and Barb Schreiber, because they're always there.
Let me jump in quick. Hi, I'm Sarah Izzard, I'm the Director of Community Standards and Counseling. So the one thing hopefully everyone is familiar with is a radar. So we do have the radar form, which you can still complete, which you can't do in class, and I understand that's similar to Starfish.
I need an ER, yeah.
But what you can do is, if you have a student who's in crisis and you are in class and you have the opportunity, you can pick up the phone and call our office, and we'll come up, or you can bring the student down, and that happens quite often, actually. And so it's not necessarily just picking up the phone and calling Teresa, because we do have other counselors, and Teresa can't do it all. She does a lot. She can't do it all, but we want to share that with all the other counselors. So Community Standards and Counseling is there, all the time for the students. And after hours, if a student is having a challenge and you're finding out about that, you can then put in the radar report, and we get that in real time. We'll connect with the student usually within 24 hours. The radar report is on WebAdvisor for folks who may not know. And that's for non-emergency. For any type of an emergency, contact Campus Safety, and they can help with the student.
just throw something out, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I'm thinking I look at this as kind of like a daily situation, and I'm not going to be able to find the extension number for radar, and I'm probably not going to stop and think and go, if I go to WebAdvisor, locate radar, and stop maybe because my hands are shaking a little bit and I'm not going to type clearly on the keyboard and hope someone reads it. I'm just, like a rapid response type something. To me, this is still, and I could be totally ignorant on this, which I probably am, but I'm thinking something rapid response, my determination or definition of rapid as opposed to a different word.
I actually have a solution. Technology. And I feel a little embarrassed because we promised you a new phone system over the summer. You've all noticed by now you don't have a new phone on your desk. And we did post an announcement on the internet about why the delay. We had some procurement delays and some other delays, equipment delays. We are installing a new phone system over the fall and into January. It'll all be completed by the beginning of classes in January. But part of that is we're putting a telephone on every instructor's station. And that phone will be able to dial not just 911, but any extension in the whole college. And I think that'll help with that instant kind of response you need. You can also dial the help desk if you have some kind of a technology problem. So that hopefully will help. Yes?
So I'm going to actually follow up on that. Can you provide any update to the copier codes?
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Andrew?
I didn't realize there was an issue.
Well, no, in terms of, so for privacy's sake, so for those of us that are far away from a copier and we're printing out a program evaluation for a student, and by the time I get down to the copier, it's already gone or shuffled in somebody else's.
Yeah,
or,
no. Contact me, Andrea Barber,
Yeah.
and I will train you on private print. So you'll be able to enter a code, and it will not print out until you go down there and enter the code. So for all confidential materials.
To the intranet? Or,
Yes, I could do
or
that.
send to all
Yeah, maybe
faculty?
if there's somebody here, I could make a video, and then we could do that. So tech savvy. All right.
No problem.
But
Thank
yes.
you.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
I could actually talk about the copier for a long time, but this is totally unrelated. Is that myself and probably 15 other people worked for like a year on the Academic Success Network advising something or other committee. And we came up with what we believed was a great ideas for summer registration and advising. And then it turned out, I came in, most of you know, I'm the coordinator for the Healthcare Studies program, and we had set up 6 times for Healthcare Studies people to come in. And I came in the first 2 times to find out that basically the registration dates for Healthcare Studies had been turned into general registration for everybody. And I know it's not the advising people's fault. And so I just was hoping that somebody could shed some light on how come we spent a year on this committee coming up with a really good idea for students to meet faculty and to become engaged at the very beginning of their career here, and what happened to our situation. But it really wasn't Tomas. I know that it wasn't his decision, so I'm not sure why he's getting handed the microphone.
He volunteered.
Because I've already talked to Tomas, so that doesn't help in any way.
This isn't on, so I'm just going to have to talk. Yeah, even talk. Is it on? I'm still talking. I don't hear anything. So a couple things. One, as with every great plan, once it's implemented, we find out where those pieces that need to be tweaked and not tweaked are. Students choose registration events not based on departmental or faculty interest. sorry, that's just the way it is. And I think back to Ithaca when I went in 1982, I wouldn't have signed up for a time with my faculty member either. No offense. But the fact is they're picking times based off of convenience. So do I miss work and come to a registration event because it's my department event? Or do I find another time? And so what we ended up having was we'd have 2 or 3 students sign up for a departmental event. And we'd have 3 or 4 faculty members scheduled to come in. That's just not a tenable situation. So we were ending up having to open up so we weren't delaying students registering till late into the semester or into the summer, so we could make sure we knew what an accurate count for our number of students who were enrolled was. So that's the big thing. Now there may be ways around that. You know, we certainly can look at requiring students to attend faculty events. We could do that. But I got to tell you, and I'm not going to make any friends here today, that's going to require a lot more on the faculty members' part. Because my understanding is that there's going to be interaction with faculty during orientation, and that's probably the better place for that interaction to occur. Because with the exception of a couple of departments, there was no engagement like there was planned from the ASM point of view, or at least my understanding. Granted, I've only been here 7 months, but that's what was happening on the ground. And so we had a choice. We had a choice of saying, okay, students, some of you students who are in programs that don't have events, you can wait till August to sign up, or we could let you into make the events open and get people registered. And we chose to do that because I think it's important that we get the students in and registered as opposed to keeping an event closed to 2 or 3 people. And so for my department, it is a complete waste of staffing and resources to do that. We've got to maximize the experience for the student. We've got to maximize the use of staff for those events. And so that's, from my perspective, that's what occurred during those events.
Well, I'm going to hand this off while I.
No, I'm happy to hear anything. That's before we start on that, that's exactly what, there's a difference between what was planned and what works on the ground. And what was planned did not work on the ground.
Okay. I'm not gonna. We'll talk later. I don't need to speak about this in public.
Not to backtrack, but as far as the concern with having a moment's notice number to call in the event of a student having a crisis, which we see a lot in or around our office, we have a cheat sheet right on the phone of the important numbers to call. So John, if there's going to be phones at each faculty station, each classroom, can we print some stickers with like the counseling office number, campus safety number, all of that, just so everyone has access to it everywhere, just in case we don't have a computer up and running or whatever the case is.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I had a request to put my number on there, my cell number. No, we'll absolutely have, we'll talk with folks and make sure there's some kind of a small directory there.
John?
I'd like to speak to Warren's question. For 20 years, we had a man in this college. His name was William DeCamp. His responsibility was to deal with any crisis we had in the institution. Now, when we had a crisis, and if you were here in the 70s, you had it, LSD. It was a serious problem, and we had people that went mentally wacky. All we did was march him down to Bill, and he had connections at that time to Willie and to any treatment. So there was no phones, there were no numbers. You just knew as a faculty member where to go with that student or to direct them to that person. And for 20 years, we had a system that was only one person. And he did a beautiful job. So I find it interesting that you're now asking me to do all the things that weren't questions. Get your phone back.
I'm on. So I just wanted to go back to what Melissa was saying. I don't want to talk specifically about the registration model, but what I heard from what Melissa was saying, and I think it's important, is all of the committee work that we do throughout the year. It can become exhausting, and it creates a lot of fatigue. And I think we put a lot of our heart and soul into that work. And sometimes we don't see it to fruition, or it gets lost, or we duplicate, et cetera. And so what that brings me to is sustainability, operational sustainability. And so then that leads me to the strategic plan. And so I just want to know how you all are thinking about that.
Hi. So Dr. Nye spoke briefly in his presentation a little bit about some of the implementation plans for the strategic plan, and more of that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks as governance sort of comes into its first meetings, and we'll have handouts and whatnot around that. So that'll also then be repeated in e-news in the governance section of e-news. So if you happen to not chat with your rep on College Council or Academic Senate, that's always a good place to follow up and look for those handouts. But one of the most important processes that we're really excited about, and that Dr. Nye mentioned yesterday, is we are going to be doing the strategic plans grants process similarly to what happened a few years ago, about 5 actually. It's going to be done a little bit differently, so the process will be more streamlined, a little less, I'm going to use the word onerous, a little less onerous than it was last time. And it will be situated with Governance Executive Council, which is the group that has members from all of the different governance and constituencies on it, so that it's sort of a central place where all of that is happening. Now, they have their first meeting in just a couple of days. So again, look for that governance update, because this will be coming through them. My area will be providing some support to that and materials and things like that. But this is really going to be centralized and run through Governance Executive. Really quickly, I can just sort of highlight preview. We have some set aside money from the Board of Trustees, $250,000. It's been dedicated to the Governance Executive process, and they'll be running a process from rubric and RFP to awarding the actual award. That'll be fully situated in Governance Exec. So unlike last time where it was sort of went through a committee and then there was a later decision by another body, this will all be done through Governance Exec. Personally, I'm super excited about it, and it's really the place where all of the really hard work I think everyone's been doing around governance, including around a lot of those committees and a lot of the strategic planning, it situates it there, it comes to life there. Anytime you have a little money, it makes things a little bit more empowered feeling. And the other thing that I'm very excited about is the whole idea and concept behind this is one of interconnectedness. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times we have ideas that are not situated in one department or one unit or one area. They take a lot of different ideas and different people to get them together. And in fact, many of our best ideas need that, right? We need the perspectives from all these different people who are out there trying to do good work for our students. That's really what this process can do. We have the strategic plan as those guideposts helping us think through the things we should be putting time and energy into. And then this process will allow different groups of people to come through and think innovatively and think forward in a way that governance can then bring to fruition, so that the community itself is bringing that innovation forward. I'm really excited about it. I know everyone there is surprised that I'm really excited about something with strategic planning, but I think we have a good plan. And take a look particularly at that governance section of e-news. The updates will be coming through there regularly. And as I said, governance exec meets in just a couple of days. So that first update with more specific information than what I'm saying right now will be in there. And I think Rob wants to say something.
No, it's on. I just want to add a couple things. What I heard from you a little bit is committee fatigue. Is that correct? Okay. And I understand that. And I think Rob and I's opinion, there's a balance, and it's a very fine balance between committee fatigue and governance and being involved in activities. And what our job is together is to be able to create processes that there are actions that are taken that create outcomes as a result, and not simply that you met in a committee and nothing got done. And that's where we have to work together within the governance process and within our functional responsibilities to be able to make these things move forward. But I do hear you and understand part of our task is to make sure that even though there may still, you can't get rid of committee fatigue, but I've heard this from a number of people. Hey, let's just get something done out of it, and that's what we'd like to do. I have to caution you about that, though. That means not everybody will be happy. So, and sometimes committee work, they get stuck in spinning in circles sometimes because hard decisions aren't made that have to come out of the committees. But when they do, then some people will be happy and some people won't sometimes. If that's okay, we can be all right. Committees have to be involved in that and make some of those hard calls as well. And that's been my experience sometimes. Well, I'm not sure I want to do that. Well, it's okay. We have to. But if I heard you correctly, we'll do the best we can to make sure that if there's committee fatigue, you got something out of it, or the college got something out of it. Fair deal? Okay.
Just a comment off this. I don't think it's just committee fatigue. I think it is frustration that all the efforts we put into the committee work, we finally come to a consensus, an agreement, a direction, and then all of a sudden the direction gets changed. Part of why I joined the ASN committee was to combat this attitude that faculty won't come in over the summer if needed for committee stuff. And every faculty member who joined the ASN committee as an ad hoc of Senate all agreed that we would come in over the summer if it was necessary to do so. We didn't know there was a problem with registration until we showed up to registrations, until things got changed. It never came back to the committee. So this is just one example. You know, in my 9 years here, this has been cyclical. I've been on several committees where this has happened. Not all of them. Some of them certainly are more successful than others, but this is just an example of time again what we're talking about, that this is fatigue, but it's also frustration.
Let me say one thing. I'm going to hand it to you real quick. We hear you. We're not perfect. I've heard this before, and we're not perfect, and we have a problem when we have summer transitions, and sometimes out of sight, out of mind. But point well taken. And I think that we have a new provost here who understands this, and that's why I'm going to hand the mic off to him, but I think that's going to help. I'll let him handle hard questions. No, but I think that will help because we've been in a transitory period where we've had a little bit of a gap, and I think that gap will be reduced based on visibility from folks from someone who has the big picture on the academic aspects, to do one of our values that we've talked about, which is interconnectedness. We're not there. We're not perfect. But we need to work on it. And it's not just me or them. Please, all of us. We have to work on that and make that better. But duly noted, and something that we need to work on.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the faculty who did show up and participate in the orientations. I had the opportunity to be part of that, and it was amazing. It really was. And I wanted to, as we talk about faculty being engaged in the summer, I wanted to recognize all the faculty who were part of that. It was a great experience.
Thank you. It was huge. Thank you. They loved it.
I think my comment is for everyone, not just for cabinet, and definitely not. But I think this is something that needs to be said. What I'm hearing from a larger perspective is that we're having a communication discussion. And Dr. and I had a discussion about communication, and loosely thought about getting together people from across the college to talk about what it is that we're doing on a routine basis. I thought he was giving me a go-do, so you guys know me. We did. So we have an ERM steering committee. That committee, we came together, we talked routinely, and we discussed how we would communicate. From that discussion, we identified a group that we named comics, but communication exchange. Michael Fisher, are you in here? He decided maybe we should call it leaders of persistence or perseverance. I'm not really sure. I invited over 42 people to come and share. Everybody, we're going to decide how many people in the room, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm not really sure. But the idea is to share. Similar to what we just witnessed between Melissa and Tomas. They're talking about things that it sounded like maybe they needed to talk about outside of this room. And the idea there is to go do that. But it gives other people a perspective of things that are happening and an opportunity to say, oh, that's right, I need to get engaged in this also. I'm going to follow up. So the idea is that we're going to be in a room, we're not going to spend 8 hours talking about one concept. Instead, we're going to share what's important in our areas. And if we need follow-up, we're going to go do that outside of that room. Now, this is not meant to be a cure-all, but I do hear that we need more communication. And I don't know a better way to do that than to put 40 or 50 people in a room and say, you have 2 minutes, Heidi. What's happening in marketing? Go, right? And then you go, and you come in and you're prepared. And then the next month when we do that, you revisit the important things. And so we're trying, I'm trying, and I hope that if you're interested, you're coming. And you're listening too, right? So you're not just telling people what you're doing, but you're listening. That's all, thank you.
Thank you for that. And I apologize, especially to Melissa, if came off sounding like I was criticizing. I've talked to the President and I about this a lot. We do have issues with communication. It has gotten better. And I particularly am pleased with the one team concept. And we have to continue, my opinion, is we have to continue to move towards that. Right now, I'll share what I shared with him. My feeling coming in as a new person is we have pretty significant silos. And the communication has to go this way. And I recently was in a situation where I was able to break down with a member of the cabinet, break down that communication line. And so I think it's important, and I acknowledge what you're saying in terms of the communication and the fact that you didn't know that those were issues until you showed up points out the fact that we've got to do a better job with the communication to get rid of this up and around issue so people can hear about things directly.
I'm just going to jump in really quick. So last fall and spring, the Employee Engagement Committee, along with College Council, worked really diligently to produce a report. And one of the main focuses of that report was this communication. And coming out of that, there's a communication strategy that's being developed. And the norms for that strategy will be developed this fall through College Council. So I really encourage everyone to engage in that discussion because it's a bit of a beast to wrap our hands around, and we need help. So I guess I'm saying, as the chair of the Employee Engagement Committee, I really invite everyone to be part of that conversation around the new communication strategy so that we can develop something that is a normalized strategy that everyone can use and include things that would
overcome some of these barriers. And while I have the microphone and I'm talking, I'd also like to ask if Deborah could just give an update on the Great Colleges to Work For survey and when we can expect to see the summary report from that.
Sure. Actually, we expect the report to come out next week. So that's the short answer.
I have Mike Nexter. Sorry.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'm Milton Johnson, Communications. And so, Carol, we typically get a enrollment update. So can you provide us with an enrollment update? And can you also give us a framework for what's been going on up to this point to try to address some of the concerns that I think I've been hearing throughout the summer?
Thanks, Milton. Posted to the intranet last evening and 2 additional reports this morning are the Fall 18 enrollment comparison reports as of this past Friday, August 24th. Overall, we're down approximately 7%, 7.2% to be exact. We're still registering this week. And we'll continue to register through the first week of classes as we have traditionally done, based on students meeting specific criteria, and that is essentially their ability to pay. So either having a FAFSA on file with an award noted, or being a cash payer, or having a willingness to use the payment plan, right? So we screen those students during the first week of classes to make sure that they are fully prepared to enroll, and obviously they also have to obtain faculty signatures to be admitted into classes. Overall, I said 7% down. That does not include Gemini. Gemini registrations will be occurring in mid-September through October. As you may know, we have a projections team that meets that has a number of stakeholders on that team to identify by subpopulation as well as by location what we anticipate enrollment to look like. And we are fairly on target for that, unfortunately. We know that enrollment is going to decline. We know that the traditional age student, in terms of high school graduate numbers, is significantly declining in our service area. That is a challenge for us. Thus, our new strategic plan is addressing cultivating the adult learner market and sustaining that market through graduation, which is critical for us. Unfortunately, too, the Excelsior Scholarship is not proving to be a winner for us. And I shared recently with Dr. Nye an article that appeared in March in the Albany Times-Union, and I actually printed out a piece of it that I'll share with you, because we are seeing the results of the scholarship in terms of our enrollment. This was, it says, the headline was, interest in SUNY is up 9%, free tuition. And a quote from the article was, it appears the free tuition program may be inspiring some scholarship-eligible students to transfer out of community colleges and into four-year colleges, now that the tuition savings from attending a community college are moot. That is a critical point that I hope all of you are hearing. The Excelsior program, for those families that are eligible, has essentially wiped out affordability. That was one of our main attractors. Our transfer population that used to be strong is down. But overall, and I want to get back to Milton's point about what have we been doing all summer. Lots. We have been working admissions, marketing, and academic advising, career and transfer services has been working diligently
to maintain personal contact with students who fall into different buckets. So students who have applications on file that are incomplete, reaching out to them, asking them to complete their files so they can be admitted. Admitted students who are O2s, what that means is they've been accepted, but they haven't indicated they intend to enroll using WebAdvisor. And then admitted students who are O7s who have indicated they intend to enroll but did not schedule a registration appointment. So there has been ongoing communication with those populations, as well as promoting prospective students and those on our inquiry list to apply. Hopefully you've seen our commercials airing on the local television stations as well as Spectrum stations. They will be running. They are ongoing right now. We switched over last week to indicate when classes start. But this is an upward challenge for all of us. I wish I had more positive news. Thus, again, the effort for all of us to work together in identifying new strategy to attract students, as well as cultivating the adult market. And for those of you who were not able to attend the EAB presentation yesterday afternoon, that PowerPoint, that presentation will be posted to the intranet as soon as I receive it from Jen Adele. I think it's pretty self-explanatory as you walk through the screens, the slides, if you will. But if you have questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. And I'll also put a plug in that I have office hours every semester, 2 hours a week. And certainly you're welcome to come down and chat with me about ideas you may have. I welcome that. Or email me or call me. Okay.
I just want to follow up real quickly. Everything Carol said is absolutely accurate, but there are a couple things that I think are important to also note. We have a couple of real bright spots that I think are sort of exciting. And okay, I do look at these numbers an awful lot, but Mary Murphy, where are you? Mary. So, synchronous learning, doing amazing things over in the chemical dependency program, huge enrollment gains, double-digit enrollment gains, and that's such a great project, so much collaboration with IT. It's just awesome. I'm so excited about it. Jack Riley, is Jack here? No? Okay. He's probably in Victor. Hey, Jack. Jack's been working so hard doing stuff for MECTech. He's only been here for a few years. He's been out in the schools, making great contacts, letting people know about what mechanical technology is, because a lot of people don't know, me included. Double-digit enrollment gains. That's fantastic. We're not talking about huge numbers, but we're talking about real work that is making a tangible difference in students' lives. And there are some really great bright spots in this whole story. If we can harness those bright spots and work on that innovation idea, particularly around helping some of our adult community members find their way here, we may sort of have a winning message here, because even in all of this sort of doom and gloom of enrollment decline, I can tell you we have brightness that I don't see when I look at some of our sister schools, and I get to see their numbers an awful lot. So.
The one thing that I would add to that, and thank you, Deborah, all right, we balance each other well, and I appreciate that. I carry the enrollment, I carry enrollment on my back, as many of you know. We have to find ways to differentiate ourselves from our peers, right? That's really what it boils down to. What is unique about this institution that sets us apart from other community colleges and potentially four-year state ops? And why should families consider us over those other options, right? We have lots of competition. I mentioned Excelsior. We We also reside in a higher ed rich area, right? We're not off on an island all by ourselves. We are surrounded by a number of higher ed institutions that, for the most part, are highly respected institutions and are facing the same challenges we are. So we need to look for partnerships. We need to differentiate ourselves and market that message about why us over them. Private schools in our area are discounting their tuition rates by at least 50%. There is one private institution a few miles down the road from us that their discount rate is 56%. So when you consider our tuition rate, which is very reasonable, but if you have a student who is looking to reside on campus or off campus in the private residence halls that are contiguous to the campus, when you add housing costs and meal costs, we're not that competitive in that regard. So we need to think about that as well.
Yes, Terry Silverman. I just want to know if our overall enrollment is down 7.2%. Can you tell us what the retention rate of students that are already completing some of the semesters?
So the fall to fall retention rate will be fall 17 to fall 18 will be calculated and available sometime mid-fall semester. We're hoping to see an uptick in the retention rate because continuing student re-enrollment is stronger than in past years. Barbara.
I was watching this meeting from up in my office, but as soon as this enrollment issue came up, I felt compelled to run downstairs because, frankly, for at least 12 years, I have been suggesting to administration that we reach out to international students because they have the cash to pay for tuition and housing and all of the costs related to education here. And it's true that we do not have an English as a second language program here, but there are many countries where English is the official or dominant language from which we could recruit students. And in my past life, before teaching, I was an international student admissions counselor and transcript evaluator. So I know the ins and outs of immigration, and as tricky as that may be these days, but still, I think that's something that we should look at, especially because now we do have on-campus housing that we could provide for those students. But like I said, those students have not or have money, and I do know that at GCC they have at least 100, if not more, international students, and they have made that happen by working their magic to allow those international students to pay in-state tuition, and that's what makes it attractive. And I don't understand why every year we're hearing these enrollment reports and numbers are going down and down and down, and we want to concentrate on adult students, and that's great. But there's this whole market of international students out there, and I don't understand why we have not been exploring that option.
So I will point out that we discounted out-of-state tuition that took effect for fall 18. So students from out-of-state and international students will now pay 1.5% of in-state tuition, which I don't believe that we're going to see the benefits of that necessarily for the fall 18, but certainly we will be working that for fall 19 and beyond.
Barb, your response was heard. So.
My name is Gina Lee. I work in Geneva at the Viticulture and Wine Tech program. Over this summer, I diligently called everyone on our prospect list. Prospects aren't even an O2. What I find as an individual and an outlier campus, actually not even a campus, is that when I go into Collie, I have a tough time registering my students. So I'm calling One Stop. And then when I can register them, now they're back onto they're protected. They're new students, so they can't change. So then I have to call back again, and I call the One Stop, and then they have to get permission to take them off of that lock situation. So it may be just for me that I'm ignorant and haven't contacted the right people, but I could do my job better if I had a little more control, because I love my program. I will do anything that it takes to get these students in. I call them. I am their college mom. I make sure that they're showing up for the first day of class. If they don't, I call them. Yeah, I just, for myself, I know it would be easier if I will register every single student that comes into that program. I don't have a problem with that, but my problem is doing that. Like, there's just, I feel like I'm always jumping a hurdle. I always have to call somebody to get help to do that.
So noted. I didn't know there was a big issue there, and obviously there is. And so for sure, wrote it down, be looking into it, or work with the One Stop here, and we'll see if we can make that situation better. Thanks for bringing it up.
Meg Gillio, Humanities Department. Deborah, question following up on Great Colleges survey. So it comes out next week. When and how quickly will the results be shared with the rest of us? Because that's probably critical to strategic planning and the work that the Student Engagement Committee is doing. So I have that question. And then Jonathan, welcome to campus. I'm going to ask you a Gemini question. Please forgive me. We often see a very large gap in communication between our faculty here on campus and the Gemini faculty, who often do really fine work with students who could become our students full time. What could we do to address that? So just two small questions there. All right.
I meant you would get the results next week.
Oh, the whole campus would get them. Okay.
Now do.
I do have a lot of experience, like in the weeds experience with concurrent enrollment students. It was part of my work in Chicago. In fact, we had a project that half of all high school students would receive some sort of college credit upon graduation. So one of the things I think is key is you hit it right on. Communication between our faculty here and the Gemini faculty teaching our courses. It is a missed opportunity if we don't get into some of those classrooms and talk to those students, if we don't invite them to our campus to see our wonderful facilities and our great faculty. It is a great opportunity. I don't have the matriculation rate right off the top of my head. I did ask for it. What is it?
39%.
It's on Deborah's. So 39% that's good, but it could get much better. So one of the incentives we've done in Chicago that I might think about working with this team here is if you're a Gemini student and you register early for class, you get a summer class fee free. So if you're a Gemini student and you register for fall classes, you get to take a course in the summer for free. Those students in Chicago, that the matriculation rate was way better. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but that's one of the incentives I think we could build into the program, something like that. Right now, how many coordinators in the room are there like course or program coordinators that you're working with Gemini faculty? Is there anyone in the room? Because I know, for instance, the conservation department, they're using activities days to spend time talking with those Gemini faculty. And John, if you want to spend a few moments just talking about your recruiting efforts and how you're using that day or that time to bridge that gap.
First I'll make a comment about Gemini. We have worked closely with our Gemini faculty, environmental science. Maura Sullivan, I didn't see her hand go up. She's probably working in her office somewhere. We've been working very closely with those folks, and we've invited them on campus. We have them come do a lab in our lab here. It's been working great. And then so I go in and I talk with the group, and it's part of the recruitment effort. And one thing I'm finding is I ask, how many of you, this is your only Gemini class you're taking? Very rarely is it their only Gemini class, our environmental science class. Many of them are taking English and many others. And then I ask, so how many credits are you going to come out of your high school with? And anywhere from 8 credits to close to 20 credits, which is pretty amazing. And I ask, how many of you are going to come to FLCC? I don't see the 39%, but again, it's just anecdotal there. Probably the biggest thing is you're taking a 4-credit environmental science class. How many of you are going to come here for conservation? And not that many of them. Well, how many of you know what you may want to go to FLCC or another college for? And they still don't quite have an idea. So they're putting together this 8 to 20 different college credits, and they don't always make sense. And so I've seen some that actually do apply to our degree program, and then they're kind of either confused or upset that maybe only 8 of the 20 are actually going to apply to a degree program. So there is this not only miscommunication perhaps between faculty and those faculty members at the high schools that are delivering, but also institution-wide, there's a community gap, or a communication gap, where they don't have an idea. They're not informed why they're taking the Gemini classes, other than they're told it's really, really, really cheap. It's college credit. Why not do it? But it doesn't always make sense, the suite of classes they're putting together. So that's a thing that I would like to see us work on, is telling those high school students or their counselors, we can make this make a lot more sense for you, and you can get much more out of it. I think some of it comes down to informing their parents and other things. I've offered at Naples, for instance, have a Gemini parent night. I'll come down and talk to them. I'm sure others here would be willing to do that as well, and help them understand, what it is they're actually doing there, other than just taking a class in their high school and also getting college credit for it. I think we need to inform them better.
Another initiative we've done is invite high school counselors to campus for a morning. Give them a little breakfast if we could, and then ask them, what's the profile of the student that you advise to send to, in this case it was city colleges, but in this case it would be Finger Lakes. And it's really telling about the type of student, the profile of those students. It's not always their top students. In fact, it's students who might not be college ready, even though they're taking college courses. And that was a really tough one to digest. So I took from that students typically choose a college for 3 reasons: quality, convenience, and cost. And they're being told that something's wrong with the quality here if they're not being advised to take the course. So we have a lot of work to do with parents and counselors in high schools to talk about the quality, our brand value. I almost feel funny sometimes talking about brand value around education, but we are a business and we have to think about that. And really it's the quality of our curriculum and the quality of our faculty that we have to talk about. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting those counselors, parents, and students on our campus so they see the quality, so it's visible for them. The 3 questions we typically ask these high school counselors are, what's the profile of the student, what do we do right, and what do we need to change? And I'll look for trying to figure out how do we develop that programming. I don't know what it will look like here, but I'll definitely work with Fred and his team and faculty to try to develop that type of programming here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ed Einhaus. I wanted to back up to the international aspect. When I was an adjunct, I had several international students. That was a number of years ago. But talked to somebody about cost, but I'm looking at marketing. This is something we really should market, and we go back to brand value. If you look at the region and what we have here, for these people to come here, I think there's a huge opportunity there. But this really boils down to marketing.
When I met that Barbara's heard, it's been discussed, but it hasn't come up to where we have a team together where we can work things together, and I think we have that now. So one of the things that we're going to do out of these town halls is no different than we've started in a couple of areas. You've seen people taking notes. I'm taking them on my phone. We want to take these back, and then the next time we have one next semester, we're going to have a town hall in October, but that's just to continue the communication. But by the time we get to the next FLCC opening days, we ought to be able to talk about, here's the things we're looking about doing, or here's the things we can't do, or here's the things we could do. So we need to take a look at it from that aspect and come back and go, okay, getting some help from some folks, Barb's not here, with their expertise of going, okay, what can we do? And this is where we're at. Does that sound good? Okay, great.
I wanted to piggyback a little bit, Kelly Govin, Science and Tech, on what John said about Gemini. It occurred to me yesterday when the disability speaker was speaking that IEP students have a transition plan required as they come to college. But maybe we should be thinking about that transition plan in a larger sense. We do articulation agreements between us and four-year institutions, but maybe we think about some of those kinds of transition plans that we could work with our Gemini students and show them pathway transitions. It doesn't have to just be Gemini students, but any of the students in our service area or wherever, and show them what that transition plan can look like and why there's an advantage to a smaller college and the kind of personalized treatment they get at FLCC versus going to be large and at a private institution that might not have the same supports in place that not just students who have IEPs or 504 plans would need, but any student would benefit from.
Yeah, I want to speak to the Gemini as well. This was something that I actually witnessed a few years ago. I was at the Canandaigua High School, and they had their big meeting for all the juniors and the parents. And I'm in this auditorium full of people, and the guidance counselor is going through all the different opportunities for the kids, and they talk about IB program and the AP program and how they can get credits for college, and then they went on to something else. Gemini was never mentioned. I had to raise my hand and say, hey, is there another program that these kids can get credits for? So maybe, I don't know, maybe they don't see a value to Gemini, but there's a disconnect there, and you probably should know about that.
So, on that note, and it has to do with my child at Victor, there's, like, when they use the word Gemini, the kids are like, I don't really know what Gemini even is. It's the wording that's confusing to these kids. And it should be used as FLCC credit or OCC credit. That Gemini word, the kids are being told not to use that word anymore because nobody understands, oh, I got Gemini credit. Well, I don't know what that means. So that wording might be changed too as well.
Just real quickly on that.
Fred's not here, so, but Fred is a member of the Strategic Enrollment Planning Steering Committee, along with a whole bunch of other people who've been talking about this. I just think there's some really great synergy that I'm hearing here, because the conversation that just happened here is the same conversation that has been happening over the last 2 or 3 months in that committee with Fred, and part of his planning that he's sort of putting together around his own strategic enrollment planning for Gemini is I think he's using the word pathways, don't hold me to that, but that's sort of the commonly used term. Really what John was describing, how do we put these collections of classes together, and that would have to look different for each school because different schools offer different courses and are able to offer different courses. What Marcus Whitman can offer as a relatively small school versus Victor as a large school are going to be different. So we can't just sort of create a one-size-fits-all program and plop it out there in the community. And so consequently, it's not a snap your fingers and let's do it thing. It's a real thoughtful thing. But what I'm loving hearing is all of this synergy of people saying sort of the same thing and coming to the same conclusion, which tells me this is sort of an idea that time has come and we have the ability to get the right people in the right room and make that happen, even if it just takes us a little while to iterate through with the different schools in our service area. So it's exciting. I think Jackie's in the back.
Yeah. So actually, I want to piggyback on what Deborah just said. And the work that I do with the Regional Education Continuum is why that was designed was to actually get teachers from FLCC or faculty and staff from FLCC in communication with people at our local high schools. So I offer the opportunity for faculty to partner with high school faculty. And I actually went to the department chairs meeting last week to remind departments that I am looking for people for the fall that are willing to do that. So that faculty members that are willing to come to a full day meeting here on campus, so a full day workshop on campus here on October 11th, and then willing to let a high school teacher come into their classroom at least once and go into a high school class at least once so they can develop this sort of relationship. I am looking for people that are interested in doing that. Over the summer, though, the work that I did through REC was actually to go to as many of the local high schools as I could. I contacted superintendents from as many of our local high schools that were willing to meet with us, and Marcy and I went together to the majority of those to talk about the programs that we have here, and not just obviously why FLCC offers great academic programs, but also all the other options. And Marcy talked about about workforce development and how we can help students, because not everybody is ready to start college right this second. It doesn't mean they're not going to come back. It doesn't mean that they're not coming ever, but we wanted to show that there are lots of options. So I am working on developing those relationships as much as possible. But to speak to what Meg said too about Gemini, I think there's two parts here. One is we need communication from faculty with the Gemini instructors to make sure that they're doing what we expect that they're doing. We can't complain that high school teachers aren't teaching our courses correctly if we're not going out there and showing them how to teach them correctly or how we want them to be taught, or we have to be in communication with them. So if there are faculty members that have never reached out to Gemini teachers to talk about that, that's an issue. So that's one part of it. But the other part is what John was talking about, where we're not communicating with the right people maybe in the high school to say, has anybody sat down with the students to say, look, if you come in, if you take 20 Gemini credits, and then you come to FLCC and your program is only 64 credits, you have 20 of them, what does that look like? What does that do? How does that help you? Financially, how does that help you? How does that help you? All of those things. But we're not having the conversations with the people that we need to, and that's something that I'm trying to, those are the conversations that I'm trying to have. A lot of the other issue with counselors that I can tell you from talking to a lot of the high school counselors is that too many high school counselors have to do counseling. So there's too many issues right now going on with students, mental health, drug abuse, all these other issues that counselors have to deal with, that they're not necessarily doing career counseling or college counseling. We're talking about what classes you're taking and all of those kinds of things. So maybe we need to offer help, for that. Maybe we need to, to sit down with the people from the high schools and say that. How can we get these messages out? What can we do to work with you? They're very receptive, I will say that high schools are extremely receptive to meeting with college individuals or meeting with us and to talk about what they can do better. So I think there's a lot to be done, but I think there's a lot of work we can do, and any of those ideas that you want to share with me, I'd be happy to listen to and then see where we can go from there.
Jackie, you said it was October 11th.
Yes.
If a faculty member couldn't sign up all day, part of the day, half the day, they're still willing, they still could attend?
They could. I generally ask them not to do that. No, yes, I get it. And the only reason, I'll explain, the only reason why I frown upon that normally is because if you're a high school teacher and you've given up a day to come here, I don't want the message from our faculty member to be, well, I'll fit you in when I can. So if we start out together, especially if you're meeting your partner that day, I don't want the person to feel like, that high school person to feel like, they can be here for a little bit, but they can't be here all day. So I generally, would encourage a faculty member, if at all possible, to see if they can, arrange an activity for the day or do something, something that still fits in. But I know that's not possible with a lot of faculty. I get that. In a lot of courses, if you have labs, you have whatever, there's a lot of reasons you can't do that. But it is possible.
Maybe a department could decide to stagger different faculties throughout the day, some creative solution.
I
The
would
reason
be
it's so
open
important
to
to
that.
talk to high school teachers is because the counselors typically, in my experience, deal with 20% of the students. The top 10% who are going to very elite schools, figuring out applications, and the lowest 10% who give them lots and lots of issues and problems. It's 80% in between that are really our students and our potential students that we really have to get in front of.
Right. And the last thing I want to say is about that one size doesn't fit all that you were mentioning too, Deborah, because I've been doing some work with Lyons School District recently. And again, each district is different. That particular district is very concerned about the number of students that, say they're going to sign up for college and then just don't. And they lose a lot of students. So they're willing to take a very personal approach, and that's what we've been talking about. Like, they're going to call these students directly, and what can they do? They asked me if we could offer maybe a night class, if we could offer some. But again, it's tricky because I wouldn't encourage them necessarily to teach a course at the high school that they could take at the Newark campus maybe. So we have to be careful about, saying, sure, we'll offer it at the high school for you, but really if I could encourage them to go to Newark, I'd rather have them do that potentially. So we do need to talk through those things with them, but at least they're coming to me now with some of those things, or at least the few people that I, have been able to meet with now have a contact or have somebody they can come to say, this is what we're thinking. But it's definitely not going to be a one-size-fits-all because districts around here are very different. Obviously Victor looks very different than Lyons, looks very different than Dundee, looks very different than, a lot of these districts. So I do think it's going to be pretty individualized.
Jackie?
Yes.
Thank you for all your good work with REC. She does a great job. Just an FYI, we hold a Gemini breakfast every year as part of our visit day, our winter visit day. We invite Gemini parents and students to the breakfast. We also offer a transcript evaluation to identify the pathway, as Deborah put it, for our students in terms of if they matriculated FLCC, how many semesters will it take them or how many credits will it take them to complete an associate's degree. But I will offer that type of advisement, career planning, and we've talked about this in the Strategic Enrollment Planning Steering Committee, also known as SEP Steering Committee. We've spoken about the fact that this really needs to occur in the 9th or 10th grade. By the time it's happening, and this gets to John's point as well, John Faust's point, about students taking credits just to take Gemini credits. Obviously, our model is very appealing to school districts now, but we need to be more intrusive in terms of working with families and their students to help guide them much earlier on in their high school years to strategically select courses that meet their needs and what their plans are at that point in time, understanding that those plans may change, right? We have to remember what we were like when we were 15 or 16. Who knew? But it's an important aspect relative to the Gemini program that we really haven't taken advantage of. And I personally would like to see that happen. I also agree with Izzy's comment about students not recognizing Gemini as an FLCC product or brand, if you will. We had discussions about changing the name of Gemini a few years ago, and there was resistance to that, and maybe it's time to revisit it. So.
I'd like to...
Oh, one more thing. Thank you. Through the McGowan Charitable Fund, we applied for a grant this past fall, and this is actually based on a Miami-Dade Community College best practice that I came across a year ago. And we are placing a pre-college advisor in Geneva High School that aligns with the Geneva 2020 initiative, where this individual will be working with 9th and 10th graders and 11th and 12th graders in facilitating an after-school career and college readiness club. We will be engaging parents of those students who are participating in the club twice each semester to bring them up to date as to what their child is involved with. This also has a twist in terms of targeting the Hispanic population in Geneva, which is quite sizable, which we need to pay attention to, and just add that in terms of a new initiative that, frankly, I would love to have a pre-college advisor available to every school district in our service area, because the comment made about counselors are doing everything but career planning is very true these days. It isn't what we experienced or what I experienced going through high school, where you did get career planning. That just simply is not happening, or if it is, it's in very small pockets.
I'd like to speak to the Gemini with a little honesty. What is the stereotype of a Gemini student in a high school? Tell me. Now, we had an interesting experience here. We had the introduction of the 2+2 program. When we introduced that, the year of the graduation of Canandaigua Academy, we got a third of that class coming here. What did they discover? Anyone want to try the question? What did they discover? You could not be challenging enough to them in the classroom. And why couldn't you be challenging enough to them in the classroom? Because your classroom was not made up of those students in high school that were on the college track. That's what we had. And therefore, you're not going to get Gemini students. They're on the college track. And that's what they're going to do. And every time I've had a Gemini student, and when I discover there's one there, I always have a conversation with them. Are you finding your classes stimulating? Unfortunately, what is a class at a community college? It's made up of a lot of kids that find learning very difficult. But the Gemini always find learning easy. I think what you should address is how can you have a program whereby it is very challenging to high school students who would go on to the university. But after teaching here, and believe it or not, I've had 25,000 students, I can just tell you that the problem that you have in a classroom is trying to deal with all sorts of students that have different abilities in terms of learning. And the Gemini are in a program in high schools that are definitely capable of going on to universities. So why would they turn to a community college? And for years, we had a very poor reputation as a community college. We were known as just an oversized high school. And regretfully, that gets carried into high schools as well. So I think you better get serious about this question from a different direction.
Professor Kennedy, thank you for that. One of the things I've learned that I've been most impressed with is FLCC's honors program. It's pretty phenomenal. So maybe some targeted communication from Gemini students about the honors program, and I'll work with Trista about that.
I just want to say real quick, I can talk from both sides because I actually came here as a Gemini instructor. So I was a Gemini instructor at Canandaigua for 9 years. And a couple of things that were different that I found was, first of all, now that he brought that up, I wasn't even bringing it up, but typically at Canandaigua, those were like the top 10% of the students that we would get into the Gemini class. Like I taught computer programming class. And in one class, I had 3 kids go to Annapolis, 1 go to MIT, 1 go to, it was phenomenal students. But my original point was, we used to work with the high school teachers a little better. I used to do a 1-week program for computer programming instructors at the high schools, because a lot of times it's the instructors that we need to work with, because they're the ones that can communicate with the students. They actually had a program I worked with Fred that I would train them for 4 days over the summer. And we all got paid. They got paid to be there, because again, teachers are giving up time over the summer, so they got a grant, and that was the best Gemini students, and we had quite a few of them actually come here. And they're the ones that are actually educating the students in the classroom. I have 2 students at Canandaigua, and their Gemini program right now, they can't get the class to go. We haven't done that program in quite a few years, but as an instructor, I didn't get much feedback from the college at that time. I mean, I wasn't sure I was teaching the right things. I wanted to make sure that they were covering those things in there. When I taught that class over the summer, I had 6 different districts actually send teachers there so they knew what to teach, even potential teachers, because they weren't sure. Once they saw what we covered, they started offering the class in the future, which was a huge thing. The other thing that we did back then, and I could date myself because Don Friday was the one that actually came into my classroom, but what they did was each student in that class got a college ID. So that college ID gave them access to the library here and other things and got them on campus, which I thought was a huge thing, because then they felt part of the college instead of just being in a high school class, taking a class, and it didn't mean much. So they got a photo ID, they could get into any of the normal things that students could here, and I think that made a big difference for students as far as feeling part of the college too.
So Brian's had a question for several rounds now. Thank you. Good job, Christy.
Just want to talk about Steve Martin playing here this Friday. Shopping horrors is also happening. Not to diminish that conversation, because I think it really is important, but from a community perspective, welcome everybody to Canandaigua greater area if you're moving in. This is a special place for a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. A quick story. Some logging sports team members last spring, I brought it up with John, said, we have to find some way to engage our students into our community so that they have like a fulfilling experience, in addition to all these other challenges. And I think that's a challenge for everybody out there, including all of ourselves. Like, how do we engage our students into our community and show them all the things that are happening? I think it's tied to our culture and our arts. And to kind of go back to CMAC, like, we have things going on. There's some way that we can kind of grow the energy on campus to make this place super attractive for the people that care about it, the people that live around here. It's important for my children. I want this place to succeed. And so I think it's something that, at least I still continue to bring up some cultural events that we can participate in here, and maybe collaboration is my point. I'm still so thankful for those sidewalks on Lakeshore Drive. I really am. The college, I think we play a really important role in our community, and I encourage us to do that more and more with our communities as well.
I just wanted to go, sorry to drag us back into Gemini land, but I wanted to go back to some of the things, like for instance, that Jackie was saying. If you ever took a look at this woman's calendar, you would just be blown backwards by how many times she has to leave campus to go and do the huge amount of work that this takes. And if we really want to make this connection with Gemini successful, you're hearing from John, you're hearing from various people that you have to go out, And what I'm seeing is that is a fundamental shift in the nature of the job that's being asked of faculty members. If you need us to do that to make this part of the program successful and more vibrant, then we need to have the time to do that job correctly. We need to have schedules built well in advance so it doesn't screw up the scheduling, so that we can plan that out and have the time to do the job the right way.
we're going to have to close out. Some people are already starting to take off. So a couple of things. One, we're going to have another one of these in the middle of October. We're going to do two a semester. So there's another one coming up to continue the dialogue. I have to introduce somebody before I do, just for a second if you wait. My only message to you out of this is, you've seen on me and some of my emails to you and on the screen the other day, one team. And what I mean by that is what happened today and how we were dialoguing. It started last spring, and all of a sudden it wasn't just a back and forth between, the cabinet and this group here. We were dialoguing again today. We need to work together on the things we talked about that we can improve upon. And I look forward to working you as one team to be able to do that. I'm really proud of this group here, bringing on the new cabinet members. The search committees did a wonderful job. They did a heck of a job. They brought in 3 highly qualified people for each of those programs. Rob and I had a very tough decision to do, and I take those very seriously. They're one of the most important things that I do, making those decisions. They affect all of us. And I look for above the skills, because I knew people were going to bring them in by the great search committees. I look for someone who is going to be a great collaborator, a great team player, and a great communicator to go along with the skill sets that they bring here. And I'm really proud to have that here and start a team that is truly one team. That is, when you look at the Great College Survey again, we're making progress, but we're not there. But I think after this year, I think you're going to see some great progress, and I look forward to working with all of you as one team. And so welcome to all our new team members here. We are really glad to have you here. And if I can indulge you for one last minute before you go, it's 10:59. We have a new program we're starting up. We're talking about being connected to the community and things going on, and we are reinvigorating the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, YAY, to be able to help bring more students to see our school. And we have a new coordinator that I'd like to have Carol introduce, that's going to be running that program over the next year. LaToya, can you stand up? Hello. Want to say a few words?
So, LaToya Collins, I started on August 13th, and one of my favorite songs, you laugh, you know what I've gone through. One of my favorite songs is We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And I love that song because each time they're getting ready to encounter this challenge that's between them and the bear, they say, well, we can't go around it, we can't go under it, we can't go over it, we have to go through it. So that's why I stand before you today. My bear is getting students in grades 6 through 12 enrolled in our program. And I also need mentors and volunteers and participants to help me get through those challenges so that my bear can be successful. So very soon, you will get a lot of email communication from me. And I will be petitioning for your help. Graphic designers, mentors, if you know attorneys, if you have an outstanding personality and you want to be an MC for one of our events, contact me, yea@flcc.edu. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day. Have a great semester.
Yeah, let's go rock and roll. I know.